A disabled Marine veteran's custom Harley-Davidson, built with his own hands during years of physical therapy, vanished from his driveway in the dead of night. The bike wasn't just steel and chrome. It was his lifeline back to the world after losing his leg in Fallujah. It was the promise he made to himself that he'd ride again no matter what. When local police shrugged and called it just another stolen bike, the veteran made one phone call. Not to a lawyer, not to insurance, to an old brother from his platoon, a man who now wore the colors of the Hells Angels. Within 6 hours, word spread through every MC chapter from California to Texas. A veteran's bike had been stolen, a brother had been disrespected, and someone was about to learn what happens when you cross the line between a man and his last piece of freedom. By sunrise, over 200 motorcycles lined the street outside a rundown chop shop on the edge of town. The thieves looked out the window and saw an army they never expected. This wasn't about a motorcycle anymore. This was about honor, brotherhood, and a debt that had to be paid. What started as a theft would become a lesson that echoed through every garage, every clubhouse, and every back road in Southern California. Because when you steal from a veteran, you don't just take his property. You wake up a brotherhood that never forgets and never forgives. If you want to see how a single stolen bike brought an entire brotherhood to war, keep watching, because what happens next will remind you why some men should never be tested. Marcus Webb sat on the weathered wooden porch of his small ranch house just outside Barstow, California, watching the sun bleed orange and crimson across the Mojave Desert. The morning air was cool and thin, carrying the scent of sage, creosote, and the faint metallic tang of gasoline from the garage. His custom Harley-Davidson Softail sat in the gravel driveway, polished to a mirror shine, its black and silver paint catching the first rays of morning light like liquid mercury. The bike was more than a machine. It was more than transportation. It was proof. Proof that he'd survived Fallujah. Proof that losing his right leg below the knee in a roadside explosion hadn't taken everything from him. Proof that a man could rebuild himself one bolt, one weld, one painful mile at a time. Marcus ran his calloused hand over the carbon fiber and titanium prosthetic beneath his worn jeans. The leg was strong, stronger than bone in some ways, but it would never feel quite right, never feel like his own. He'd spent 3 years in VA hospitals learning to walk again, learning to trust his balance, learning to live with the phantom pain that woke him at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat. Another 2 years he'd spent in his garage, teaching his hands to remember what his body had forgotten. Building the Harley from the frame up, sourcing parts from junkyards and online auctions, grinding metal, welding seams, painting and repainting until the colors matched the vision in his head. The Harley had been his therapy. Every turn of the wrench was a small victory. Every late night adjusting the carburetor was a meditation. Every test ride down the empty desert highway at dawn was a declaration. I'm still here. I'm still alive. He'd named it Promise, because that's what it was. The promise he'd made to himself in a field hospital bed in Iraq, staring at the white ceiling tiles while morphine dulled the screaming pain in his shattered leg. The promise he'd whispered through gritted teeth when the doctors told him he'd never walk without a cane. I'll ride again. I'll feel the wind in my face. I'll be free. Marcus stood slowly, his prosthetic clicking softly as it locked into place. He grabbed his black helmet from the handlebar, scratched and faded from years of use, and swung his leg over the seat. The leather was warm from the sun, familiar, safe. He turned the key. The engine roared to life, a deep, guttural growl that vibrated through his chest and rattled the windows of the house. He twisted the throttle once, twice, feeling the raw power beneath him. The sound was thunder. The sound was home. Then he rode. The highway stretched before him like a black ribbon through an ocean of sand and rock. No traffic, no noise, just the rumble of the engine, the wind tearing at his leather jacket, and the endless blue sky overhead. For 20 miles, Marcus felt whole again. Complete, human. The scars on his soul didn't disappear, the nightmares didn't vanish. But for those 20 miles, they were quiet. When he returned home just after 8 a.m., sweat cooling on his forehead and adrenaline still humming in his veins, he parked the Harley in its usual spot near the garage. He locked the steering column, an old habit from his days stationed overseas, and patted the fuel tank twice. "See you tomorrow, girl," he murmured. He headed inside for coffee and eggs, unaware that he'd just taken the last ride on Promise for a very long time. Marcus woke at 2:47 a.m. to the sound of silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the desert quiet he'd grown used to. The wrong kind. The kind that set his teeth on edge and made his heart rate spike. He'd always been a light sleeper, something the Marines had drilled into him during basic training and reinforced through 2 tours in Anbar province. Even in civilian life, his brain stayed wired for threats. A dog barking 3 houses down, a car door slamming on the street, the scrape of metal on pavement. His subconscious catalogued every sound, every shift in the night air. Tonight, there was nothing. But his gut, the same gut that had kept him alive in Ramadi, told him something was off. He swung his legs out of bed, the sheets damp with sweat from another nightmare he couldn't quite remember. He pulled on his jeans and strapped on his prosthetic, the Velcro straps making soft ripping sounds in the darkness. The house was pitch black. He moved through the hallway without turning on lights, muscle memory guiding him past the coat rack, around the corner, toward the front window. He pulled back the curtain and looked outside. The driveway was empty. Marcus blinked. He rubbed his eyes with the heels of his hands. He stepped onto the porch barefoot, the cold concrete biting his skin and sending shivers up his spine. The Harley was gone. No broken glass scattered on the gravel. No tire marks in the dirt. No sign of forced entry into the garage or the front gate. Just gone. Vanished like it had never existed. His chest tightened. His hands balled into fists so tight his knuckles went white. He limped back inside, grabbed his phone from the nightstand, and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. "Barstow Police Department, what's your emergency?" "My motorcycle was stolen." "When did this occur, sir?" The dispatcher's voice was flat, professional, bored. "Sometime in the last 4 hours?" "Between midnight and now." "Can you describe the vehicle?" Marcus gave them everything. Make Harley-Davidson. Model Softail Custom. Year 2018. Frame rebuilt 2023. Color black with silver accents and custom chrome. Modifications: extended forks, aftermarket exhaust, leather saddlebags with hand-tooled designs. The Hells Angels support decal on the tank. A gift from a brother he'd served with overseas. A man who'd saved his life more than once. The dispatcher's tone shifted. Polite but distant, detached. "We'll file a report, Mr. Webb. An officer will contact you within 24 to 48 hours to follow up." "That's it?" Marcus's voice cracked. "That's all you're going to do?" "Unfortunately, sir, stolen motorcycles are extremely difficult to recover. Most are stripped for parts within hours. We recommend contacting your insurance company as soon as possible." Marcus hung up without saying goodbye. He stood in the kitchen, staring at the empty driveway through the window. The moon cast long shadows across the gravel. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. His jaw clenched. His breathing came shallow and fast. Promise was gone. 3 years of work. 3 years of healing. 3 years of keeping his sanity intact. Gone. He looked at his phone, scrolled through his contacts, stopped on a name he hadn't called in months. Reaper. Marcus hesitated for only a second. Then he made a different call. Evan Reaper Malloy answered on the second ring, his voice rough with sleep. "Marcus?" They took it. A pause, the sound of sheets rustling, a woman's voice murmuring in the background. Then, "Took what?" "Promise. Someone stole the bike." Silence. Long enough that Marcus thought the call had dropped. Then Reaper's voice came back, sharp and clear, all traces of sleep gone. "When?" "Tonight." Sometime after midnight. I woke up at 2:47 and it was gone. You called the cops? Yeah. They don't care. Said they'd file a report and get back to me in 2 days. Reaper exhaled slowly. Marcus heard a lighter click, the hiss of a cigarette being lit. Those bastards! I don't know what to do, man. That bike, it's all I've got. No. Reaper's voice was steel. You've got brothers, and we're going to get it back. Marcus's throat tightened. I can't ask you to... You're not asking, I'm telling you. Someone stole from a Marine. Someone stole from family. That doesn't stand. Reaper, I'll make some calls. Stay by your phone. The line went dead. Marcus had met Reaper in Ramadi, 2006. They'd been part of the same platoon, 2 lance corporals who'd bonded over late-night guard shifts, shared cigarettes, and a mutual love of motorcycles. Reaper had been the one to drag Marcus behind cover when the IED went off, tourniquet his leg while rounds cracked overhead, and scream for a corpsman until his voice went hoarse. Reaper had been the one to visit Marcus in the hospital at Landstuhl, Germany, when most of the platoon had already rotated home. The one who'd sat by his bedside and promised, "You'll ride again, brother. I swear to God, I'll make sure of it." After discharge, Reaper had gone home to San Bernardino and patched into the Hells Angels. It hadn't been easy. He'd spent years as a prospect proving himself, earning respect. But he'd risen through the ranks, sergeant-at-arms, road captain, a man respected and feared in equal measure. And now Marcus had called in a debt that didn't need words, a debt written in blood and brotherhood. Within 30 minutes, Reaper's phone lit up like a Christmas tree. He made 6 calls, each one to a chapter president across Southern California, each one with the same message, delivered in the same flat, dangerous tone. A disabled Marine veteran's motorcycle was stolen tonight in Barstow. Custom build, 3 years of work. Guy lost his leg in Fallujah. Bike's all he's got. Cops don't give a damn. We do. Pass the word. By 6 a.m. the response was unanimous. They were riding. Comment below where you think the stolen bike ended up and whether the thieves knew what they'd just started. Reaper stood in the parking lot of the Iron Horses Clubhouse in San Bernardino, watching the sun rise over the San Gabriel Mountains. The sky was streaked with pink and gold. Behind him, 15 motorcycles idled in formation. Harleys, choppers, one custom Triumph with ape-hanger bars. The riders wore leather vests with the Hells Angels patch stitched across the back. The iconic winged death's head, red and white against black. But this wasn't a club ride. This wasn't a poker run or a charity event. This was war. Reaper pulled out his phone and opened a group message thread titled SoCal Brotherhood. The thread had been silent for weeks, used only for emergencies and major events. He typed quickly, his thumbs flying across the screen. Disabled Marine vet, Iraq combat wounded, custom Harley Softail stolen last night in Barstow, black and silver, HA support decal on tank, 3 years of work. Cops don't care, we do. Rolling out at 0800. Anyone who can ride, ride. This is personal. He hit send. Within 3 minutes, replies flooded in. San Bernardino chapter rolling. 15 bikes ready. Riverside's got 12. We're in. Palm Desert sending 8. See you there. Vegas chapter's 2 hours out. Count us in. Ontario, 10 riders. On the way. Victorville, 6 bikes. Let's ride. By 7:30 a.m., over 60 motorcycles had assembled in 3 separate locations across Southern California. Reaper coordinated with chapter presidents, assigning zones and contact points. He pulled up a map on his phone and marked key locations. Chop shops, salvage yards, pawn shops, mechanics known for asking no questions. The strategy was simple but effective. Use the network. The Hells Angels had eyes everywhere. Mechanics who owed favors, tow truck drivers who moved stolen vehicles, scrapyard owners who bought parts off the books, guys who worked at pawn shops, storage facilities and roadside garages. If a stolen custom Harley showed up anywhere in the Inland Empire, someone would know. Reaper made another call, this one to a man named Hector Wrench Salinas, who ran a salvage yard outside Victorville. Wrench was ex-army, a Gulf War vet who'd done 2 tours and came home with a Purple Heart and a limp. He wasn't a Hell's Angel, but he was a friend, a brother in a different sense. "Wrench, you awake?" "I am now." "What's up, Reaper? You hear anything about a custom Softail coming through? Black and silver, high-end parts." "Not yet." "Why?" "Marine vet, lost his leg in Fallujah. Spent 3 years building that bike. Someone stole it last night." Wrench's voice hardened. "Jesus, that's low. I need you to put the word out. Every salvage yard, every chop shop, every mechanic you know. If that bike shows up, I want to know about it within the hour." "You got it. I'll make some calls." "Thanks, brother." Reaper ended the call and mounted his bike, a murdered-out Harley Dyna with straight pipes and a sissy bar. The convoy rolled out at exactly 8 a.m., engines roaring in perfect unison. The sound was like rolling thunder. The sound was a promise. They weren't looking for a motorcycle. They were looking for justice. By mid-afternoon, Wrench had a lead. He called Reaper at 3:15 p.m., his voice tight with urgency. "Got something. A guy named Dante Cruz runs a chop shop off Route 395, just north of Adelanto. Word on the street is he's been moving stolen bikes for the last 6 months. High-end stuff, custom parts, no questions asked. Cash only. You trust the source?" "Yeah. Guy owes me. He wouldn't lie." "Address?" Wrench rattled off the location. An unmarked warehouse on a dirt road, surrounded by desert scrub and chain-link fence. "But listen, Reaper, this Dante guy's connected. He's got muscle. You roll in there with your crew, it could get ugly." "Then it gets ugly?" "I'm serious. He's got ties to some bad people. Cartels, maybe, or at least wannabe gangsters who think they're tough. I don't care if he's got ties to the president. He's got a veteran's bike, and we're taking it back." Wrench sighed. "All right. Be careful, brother." Reaper forwarded the address to the group thread. Within 20 minutes, the convoy had regrouped at a truck stop off Interstate 15 and changed course toward Adelanto. They arrived at the chop shop just before sunset. The building was a massive corrugated metal warehouse, its walls streaked with rust and graffiti. The property was surrounded by 8-foot chain-link fence, topped with barbed wire. Rusted car frames, engine blocks, and motorcycle parts littered the yard like a graveyard of metal. 2 men stood outside the main entrance, smoking cigarettes. Young, early 20s, tattooed arms, baggy jeans hanging low. They looked bored. Then they saw the bikes. Over 120 motorcycles rolled up the dirt road in tight formation, dust clouds rising behind them like a desert storm. The rumble was deafening, a wall of sound that vibrated the ground and rattled the warehouse walls. The riders didn't speak, they didn't shout. They didn't need to. The 2 men outside dropped their cigarettes and ran inside, stumbling over each other in their haste. Reaper parked his bike at the front gate, killed the engine, and dismounted. Behind him, the convoy stretched half a mile down the road, bikes gleaming in the fading sunlight. He walked to the warehouse door, a heavy steel roll-up gate with a smaller side entrance, and knocked 3 times. No answer. He knocked again. Harder. The sound echoed inside. The door cracked open 6 inches. A man in his 30s peered out, greasy black hair pulled into a ponytail, oil-stained hands, a silver chain around his neck. His eyes were wide with fear. "We're closed." "No," Reaper said quietly. "You're not. Look, man, I don't want any trouble." "You've got something that belongs to a friend of mine." The man swallowed hard. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Black and silver Harley Softail, custom build. Stolen 2 nights ago from a Marine veteran in Barstow." The man's eyes darted toward the interior of the warehouse. I don't have any stolen bikes here. Everything's legit." Reaper stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Let me explain something to you. Behind me, there are 120 motorcycles, 120 riders. Every single one of them is ready to tear this place apart bolt by bolt until we find that bike. Now you can make this easy, or you can make this hard. Your choice." The man's face went pale. "Look, man, I just work here. I don't own the place. Then get me someone who does." The man hesitated, then nodded. "Wait here." He closed the door. Reaper heard muffled voices inside. 30 seconds later, the door opened again. This time a different man stood there, older, mid-40s, with a shaved head and a scar running down his left cheek. "You Reaper?" "That's right. I'm Santos. I run this place." He crossed his arms. "You've got some nerve rolling up here with an army. You've got some nerve dealing in stolen property." Santos's jaw tightened. "I don't know anything about a stolen bike." "Yes, you do, and I'm not leaving until I get it back." Behind Reaper, engines revved in unison, a warning. Santos flinched. Reaper didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Here's how this works," he said, his tone calm and measured. "You bring out the bike. You tell me who stole it and where I can find them. And maybe we walk away without burning this place to the ground." Santos's eyes flicked to the convoy behind Reaper. Over 100 bikers stood beside their machines, arms crossed, faces hard. Some had tire irons. Some had chains. None of them looked like they were bluffing. "I don't have the bike anymore," Santos said finally. "Then you know who does." "Look, man, I don't want trouble with you guys. I respect the patch. But this is business." "Business?" Reaper's voice sharpened. "You stole from a disabled Marine veteran, a man who lost his leg defending this country, a man who spent 3 years building that bike with his own hands. That's not business. That's disrespect." Santos shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't steal anything. Some guys brought it in 2 nights ago. I gave them cash. That's it." "Who were they?" "I don't know their names." Reaper took a step forward. "I don't believe you." Santos's hands went up. Okay. One of them was a guy named Dante Cruz. He runs a crew out of Apple Valley, steals bikes, strips them, sells the parts online, international buyers, big money. Where's Dante? He's got a place off Navajo Road, big house at the end of a cul-de-sac, security cameras, guard dog. He's paranoid as hell. Reaper pulled out his phone and typed the address into the group thread. "If you're lying, we're coming back, and next time we won't knock." Santos nodded quickly. "I'm not lying, man. I swear on my mother." Reaper turned and walked back to his bike. The convoy remounted in perfect synchronization, engines firing up like a symphony of thunder. They rolled out slowly, deliberately, leaving Santos standing in the dust, heart pounding, hands shaking. 2 hours to Apple Valley. The sun was setting. The desert sky turned deep purple and gold. And somewhere ahead, Dante Cruz had no idea what was coming. If you're rooting for Marcus to get his bike back, hit that like button, because the final confrontation is about to go down. Dante Cruz lived in a 2-story stucco house at the end of a dead-end street in Apple Valley, surrounded by desert scrub, gravel, and chain link. Security cameras were mounted on all 4 corners of the property, their red lights blinking in the dusk. A pit bull chained in the yard paced back and forth, growling at shadows. When the convoy arrived at 9 p.m., and the street looked like a military operation. Over 200 motorcycles parked in formation, blocking every exit, every driveway, every possible escape route. Headlights illuminated the house like a stage under spotlights. The rumble of engines shook the windows and set off car alarms 3 blocks away. Neighbors peered through curtains, phones in hand, but no one dared step outside. Reaper killed his engine and dismounted. 10 riders flanked him as he walked to the front door, men with road names like Hammer, Axel, Grinder, and Bone. Men who'd been riding together for decades. Men who understood loyalty. Reaper knocked on the door, 3 solid blows that echoed through the house. No answer. He knocked again, harder. A voice shouted from inside, "Get the hell off my property or I'm calling the cops." "Open the door, Dante. I don't know who you think you are, but you're trespassing. We're not leaving until you open this door." Silence. Then the sound of a deadbolt sliding. The door cracked open 3 inches, held by a chain. Dante Cruz peered out. Mid-30s, shaved head, neck tattoos of skulls and flames, gold chain thick as a rope. His eyes widened when he saw the crowd behind Reaper. What the hell do you want? You stole a veteran's motorcycle. Dante's face twisted into a sneer. I don't know what you're talking about. Reaper held up his phone, showing a photo of Marcus's Harley, the black and silver paint, the custom chrome, the Hells Angels support decal. This bike. You took it 3 nights ago from Barstow. Prove it. Don't need to. We already know. Behind Reaper, the convoy revved their engines in perfect unison, a deafening roar that shook the walls and rattled the windows. The pit bull in the yard started barking frantically, straining against its chain. Dante's bravado cracked, sweat beaded on his forehead. Look, man, it was just business, nothing personal. It's personal to us. Fine, fine, I'll give it back. Just get these guys out of here. You're scaring the neighborhood. Not good enough. You're going to return the bike. You're going to apologize to the man you stole it from, and you're going to do it tonight. Dante's face flushed with anger. Are you serious? You can't make me... Reaper stepped closer, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. You've got 2 options. Option 1, you give us the bike, apologize, and we leave. Option 2, we take the bike, and you explain to the hospital staff how you fell down a flight of stairs. Twice. Dante stared at Reaper for a long moment. Then he glanced past him at the sea of leather and chrome and hardened faces. He swallowed hard. It's in the garage. I'll get it. Smart choice. At 11:47 p.m., the sound of a diesel engine rumbled down the quiet residential street where Marcus Webb lived. Dante Cruz's flatbed truck rolled slowly into the gravel driveway, its headlights cutting through the darkness like searchlights. Behind it, 30 motorcycles followed in tight formation, Harleys, choppers, and custom builds, their engines idling in a low, menacing growl that echoed off the desert hills. The Harley sat in the back of the truck bed, covered with a blue tarp and secured with heavy-duty tie-down straps. Even hidden beneath the canvas, Marcus recognized the shape, the lines, the silhouette that had become as familiar to him as his own reflection. Dante climbed out of the cab, his movements stiff and mechanical. His face was pale, drained of color, and his hands trembled as he closed the driver's door. He was flanked immediately by Reaper and 4 Hells Angels, men whose road names were etched into their leather vests: Hammer, Axle, Grinder, and Bone. They didn't touch him. They didn't need to. Their presence alone was enough to keep him in line. Marcus stepped onto the porch, the wooden boards creaking under his weight. He wore jeans, a plain grey t-shirt, and his prosthetic leg. His arms were crossed over his chest. His face was unreadable. No anger, no relief, just a cold, measured stare that seemed to look straight through Dante. He'd been waiting. Reaper had called an hour earlier from the road, voice steady and calm. "We got it. We got your bike. We're bringing it home." Now, standing in the cool night air with the desert wind whispering through the sage, Marcus watched as the man who'd stolen his life's work stood before him, small and pathetic. Dante took a hesitant step forward, his eyes fixed on the ground. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it, opened it again. His voice came out thin and weak. I brought your bike back." Marcus said nothing. He just stared. Dante shifted his weight from foot to foot, his hands wringing together nervously. "I'm sorry, man, I really am. I didn't know it was a vet's bike. I didn't know what it meant to you. I swear, if I'd known—" "You didn't care," Marcus said quietly, his voice flat and cold as stone. "You saw something you wanted, and you took it. You didn't care who it belonged to. You didn't care what it meant. You didn't care about the hours, the work, the sacrifice. You just saw dollar signs." Dante flinched like he'd been slapped. "You're right. You're absolutely right. I was greedy. I was stupid. It was wrong. I know that now." "Do you?" Marcus took a slow step down from the porch, his prosthetic clicking softly against the wood. "Do you know what that bike represents? It's not just metal and chrome. It's 3 years of my life, 3 years of physical therapy, 3 years of fighting to prove I wasn't broken. That bike is the promise I made to myself in a hospital bed when the doctors told me I'd never walk without a cane. It's the promise I made when I woke up screaming every night from the nightmares. It's proof that I survived. Dante's face crumpled. Tears welled in his eyes. "I'm sorry, God, I'm so sorry. I didn't think. I never think. That's my problem. I needed the money, and I thought—" "You didn't think at all." Marcus's voice was sharp now, cutting through the night air like a blade. "You took something that wasn't yours. You violated someone's home. You stole someone's freedom. And for what? A few $1,000s. "I'll pay you back," Dante stammered. "Every dollar. I swear. I'll get a job. I don't want your money." Marcus stepped closer, close enough that Dante could smell the desert dust on his clothes, the motor oil on his hands. "I want you to understand what you did. I want you to carry this with you. Every time you think about taking something that doesn't belong to you, I want you to remember this night. I want you to remember the faces of these men behind you, and I want you to remember that there are consequences." Reaper stepped forward, his voice calm but laced with authority. "Unload it, carefully." Dante nodded quickly, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. He moved to the truck bed, fumbling with the tie-down straps. His hands shook so badly that Hammer and Axel had to help him. Together, they loosened the straps and carefully removed the tarp, revealing the Harley Softail beneath. The bike gleamed in the porch light, its black and silver paint spotless, its chrome shining like liquid mercury. Every custom part was still intact. The extended forks that Marcus had spent weeks adjusting, the leather saddlebags he'd hand-tooled himself, the aftermarket exhaust he'd saved for months to afford. Even the Hells Angels support decal was still in place, unblemished. They lowered a portable aluminum ramp from the truck bed to the gravel driveway. Dante climbed into the truck bed and carefully rolled the Harley down the ramp, one hand on the handlebar, the other steadying the frame. The bike's tires crunched softly against the gravel as it touched the ground. Marcus walked down the porch steps slowly, his prosthetic clicking with each measured step. He approached the Harley like it was a long-lost friend. His hand reached out, trembling slightly, and touched the fuel tank. His fingers traced the curves of the metal, the smoothness of the paint, the raised edges of the Hells Angels decal. It was real. It was home. His jaw tightened. His eyes glistened with moisture, but he didn't let the tears fall. Not yet. Not in front of everyone. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He looked at Reaper, then at the other bikers standing in the driveway, their faces illuminated by the truck's headlights. "Thank you for bringing her back." Reaper walked over and placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, squeezing firmly. "You don't have to thank me, brother. You don't have to thank any of us. This is what we do. This is what family does. You served, you sacrificed, you earned this bike 100 times over. We're just making sure you get what's yours." Marcus nodded, unable to speak. The lump in his throat was too large, the emotion too raw. He turned back to Dante, who stood a few feet away, looking small and defeated. "Get out of here," Marcus said quietly. "And if I ever hear your name again, if you ever steal from another veteran, another Marine, another person who earned what they have through blood and sweat, we won't be this polite. Do you understand?" Dante nodded frantically. "I understand. I swear to God I'm done. I'm out of the game. I'll never steal another bike. I'll get a real job. Just go." Dante didn't need to be told twice. He climbed into the truck, started the engine with shaking hands, and backed out of the driveway carefully, avoiding eye contact with the bikers who watched him leave. His taillights disappeared into the darkness, swallowed by the desert night. For a moment, the only sound was the wind and the soft rumble of idling motorcycles. Then, Reaper broke the silence. "You got coffee?" Marcus blinked, surprised. "Yeah, I think so." "Good. We're staying." "You don't have to." "We're staying," Reaper repeated firmly. "We didn't ride all this way just to drop off a bike and leave. Besides, it's late. Road's dangerous at night. We'll crash here, head out in the morning." Marcus looked around at the 30 bikers in his driveway, men and women he'd never met, who'd given up their evening, their gas money, their time to help a stranger. "I don't have enough space." "We'll sleep outside," a biker named Grinder said, grinning. Wouldn't be the first time, won't be the last. Another rider, a woman in her 40s with short red hair and a vest that read Valkyrie, laughed. We've slept in worse places, trust me. Marcus felt his chest tighten again. All right, let me make some coffee. They stayed until dawn. The bikers set up camp in Marcus's front yard and driveway, spreading out sleeping bags and rolling out blankets on the gravel. Some sat on their bikes, leaning back against sissy bars and staring at the stars. Others gathered around a small fire pit Marcus had in the backyard, passing around a bottle of whiskey and telling stories. Marcus sat on the porch steps, a cup of black coffee in his hand, listening. He didn't say much. He just listened. They talked about their own service. Army Rangers, Navy Corpsmen, Air Force Loadmasters, Marine Grunts. They talked about brothers they'd lost in combat, brothers who died on the road in accidents, brothers who'd taken their own lives because the weight of the past was too heavy to carry, and they talked about why they rode. It's freedom, Hammer said, his voice rough from years of smoking. Out there on the road, nothing else matters. No bills, no ex-wives, no bosses, just you and the machine. It's therapy, Axel added. Better than any shrink I ever talked to. It's family, Reaper said quietly, looking at Marcus. When everything else falls apart, you've got brothers who'll ride through hell for you. Marcus nodded, his throat tight. I didn't think anyone cared. When I called the cops, they acted like it was just another stolen bike, like it didn't matter. It matters, Valkyrie said firmly. You matter. What you did for this country matters, and we don't forget that. As the fire burned low and the stars wheeled overhead, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because the bike was back, not because justice had been served, but because he wasn't alone anymore. 3 days later, on a Saturday morning when the desert sun was just beginning to warm the earth, Marcus rode Promise to the Iron Horses clubhouse in San Bernardino. The ride took just over an hour, following Interstate 15 west through the high desert, past Joshua trees and rock formations that looked like ancient sentinels guarding the land. The wind tore at Marcus's jacket. The engine rumbled beneath him like a living heartbeat. For the first time since the theft, he felt completely at ease. He'd been invited by Reaper. Come to the clubhouse Saturday. Barbecue, music, good people. You'll fit right in. Marcus hadn't been sure. He wasn't a Hell's Angel. He wasn't even a prospect. He was just a guy who'd gotten his bike back thanks to the kindness of strangers. But Reaper had insisted. You're family now. And family shows up. The Iron Horses clubhouse sat on 2 acres of dusty land at the edge of San Bernardino, surrounded by chain-link fence and shaded by a few scraggly palm trees. The main building was a single-story structure painted dark red with black trim. The Hells Angels' Death's Head logo painted large on the side. A covered patio extended from the front, lined with picnic tables and old couches. The parking lot was packed. Harleys, choppers, custom builds, vintage Indians, even a couple of Triumphs and BMWs. There had to be at least 60 bikes, maybe more, all gleaming in the morning sun. Riders milled about, some working on their machines, others sitting in groups talking and laughing. Music blasted from speakers mounted on the porch, classic rock, Lynyrd Skynyrd, AC/DC. The smell of grilled meat hung heavy in the air. Someone had set up a massive barbecue pit, and smoke billowed from it in thick grey clouds. When Marcus rolled through the gate on his Softail, the crowd noticed. Conversations paused, heads turned. Then someone shouted, "There he is! That's Marcus!" Applause erupted like thunder. Riders raised their beers, their sodas, their coffee mugs. Whistles pierced the air. A few guys pounded on their gas tanks like war drums. Engines revved in celebration, the roar echoing off the clubhouse walls. Marcus killed his engine, pulled off his helmet, and looked around, completely overwhelmed. His heart pounded. His palms were sweaty. Reaper emerged from the crowd, a wide grin splitting his face. He walked over and clapped Marcus on the shoulder hard enough to nearly knock him sideways. "How's she running?" "Like nothing ever happened." Marcus said, his voice shaky with emotion. Good, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. An older biker with a long grey beard and a Vietnam veteran patch on his vest walked up slowly, leaning on a cane. His eyes were sharp and clear despite his age. You ride with honor, son. That's all that matters in this world. Keep that bike shiny and keep your head up. Marcus nodded, unable to find words. Another rider, a woman in her 50s with short-cropped salt and pepper hair and a road name stitched on her vest that read Phoenix, handed Marcus a cold beer from a cooler. Welcome to the family, Marcus. We heard what happened. Hell of a thing. But you got her back, and that's what counts. Thank you, Marcus managed. All of you. I don't know what I would have done without... Phoenix waved him off. Don't thank us. We look out for our own. You're one of us now, whether you wear the patch or not. Marcus was introduced to dozens of people over the next hour. Some were Hell's Angels, some were members of support clubs, some were just friends of friends who rode and respected the lifestyle. There were veterans from every branch: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard. There were teachers, mechanics, nurses, construction workers, even a retired firefighter named Cal, who'd lost 2 fingers in a warehouse blaze. Everyone had a story, everyone had scars, and everyone treated Marcus like he'd been part of the family for years. Later that afternoon, as the sun climbed higher and the barbecue reached full swing, Marcus found himself sitting in a loose circle of folding chairs near the fire pit. Reaper sat to his left. Hammer and Axel sat across from him. Phoenix sat to his right, along with a quiet biker named Preacher, who wore a small silver cross around his neck. They told stories. Hammer talked about his time in the army, stationed in Korea during the Cold War, freezing his ass off on guard duty and dreaming about riding motorcycles back home. Axel told a funny story about getting pulled over by a state trooper who turned out to be a former Marine and let him off with a warning and a salute. Phoenix described her first long-distance ride, Los Angeles to Sturgis, South Dakota, solo, 10 years ago, when everyone told her she was crazy. Preacher talked about losing his younger brother in Afghanistan, how he'd turned to the bottle afterward, drinking himself into oblivion every night until he couldn't remember his own name, how the Hell's Angels had pulled him out of that darkness, gave him a purpose, gave him brothers who understood. I was ready to eat a bullet, Preacher said quietly, staring into the fire, had the gun loaded, had it in my mouth. Finger on the trigger. Then Reaper called, said he needed help moving some furniture, dumbest excuse I'd ever heard. But I went, and he didn't ask me to move anything. He just made me coffee, sat me down and said, "You're not alone." That was it, 5 words, but it saved my life. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He understood that feeling, the isolation, the weight, the sense that no one could possibly understand what you'd been through. I felt that way after I lost my leg, Marcus admitted. I didn't want to leave the hospital, didn't want to face the world, didn't want people staring at me, pitying me. I thought my life was over. Reaper leaned forward. But it wasn't. No, it wasn't, but it took me a long time to realize that. Building the bike helped, gave me something to focus on, something to work toward. And now? Phoenix asked gently. Marcus looked at Promise parked among the other bikes, its chrome glinting in the sunlight. Now I know I'm not alone. I know there are people who care, who'll go to war for a stranger just because it's the right thing to do. Hammer raised his beer. Damn right we will. The circle raised their drinks in unison. As the afternoon turned to evening and the sky turned deep orange and purple, someone passed Marcus a Hell's Angels challenge coin, a thick, heavy disc of metal with the winged death's head on one side and the words, "Forever 2 wheels," engraved on the other. "What's this?" Marcus asked, turning it over in his palm. "That's yours," Reaper said. "It's not a patch. You're not a member, but it's a symbol. It means you're family. You're protected. Anywhere you go, any clubhouse you roll up to, you show that coin, and they'll know you're one of us." Marcus stared at the coin, his vision blurring. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just ride. Live your life. And if you ever need anything, anything at all, you call, day or night, doesn't matter. We'll be there." Marcus nodded, gripping the coin tightly. Later that night, as the fire burned low and the stars filled the sky in a glittering blanket, Marcus sat quietly among his new family. He listened to the laughter, the music, the low rumble of conversation. He felt the warmth of the fire on his face and the cool desert breeze on his back. And for the first time since Fallujah, he felt whole, not because his body was complete, not because the nightmares had stopped, but because he'd found something he thought he'd lost forever: purpose, connection, brotherhood. Someone started playing a guitar, slow, soulful chords that drifted through the night air. A few people sang along quietly. Others just listened, staring into the fire, lost in their own thoughts. Marcus looked at Promise one more time, parked among the other bikes like it had always belonged there. The Harley wasn't just a machine anymore. It wasn't just proof that he'd survived. It was a symbol of something bigger, a symbol of loyalty, of honor, of men and women who refused to let a brother fall, who rode hundreds of miles, confronted criminals, and demanded justice. Not because they had to, but because that's what family does. Reaper leaned over and nudged Marcus's shoulder. "You good?" Marcus nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, I'm good. Good, because we're riding tomorrow. Big group ride through the mountains. You in?" "Hell yes, I'm in." Reaper grinned. "That's what I like to hear." As the night wore on and the fire turned to embers, Marcus felt the weight he'd been carrying for years begin to lift. The guilt, the isolation, the fear that he'd never be enough again. It wasn't gone completely. Maybe it never would be. But it was lighter now. Because he wasn't carrying it alone anymore. He had brothers. He had family. And he had Promise. A bike built from broken pieces, just like him. Proof that anything can be rebuilt. Anything can be restored. As long as you have people willing to fight for you. Thank you for watching this story of loyalty, honor, and brotherhood. If it moved you, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs a reminder that they're not alone. Drop a comment below about a time someone went out of their way to help you. We'd love to hear your story. Ride safe, stay strong, and never forget, brotherhood isn't just a word. It's a promise. And some promises are worth everything.